Hello,
Hello.
is Judy?
I'm
Yeah,
reminded.
this is
This is Mary.
Amy.
Yes.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Mary. I have to admit, I don't know who Mary is. Who are you, Mary?
Hi. I used to be David's neighbor when I lived in Cambridge.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome.
I heard some beautiful stories about Lillian through him.
Well, you'll probably hear some more today. So
I'm
who else
looking-
is on this call? Let me see who else is on the call. Judy Burns. Judy, can you hear me? Rob, I know you're there. Where's your camera? Mary, do you want to turn your camera?
I'm trying to find it. How do I get it?
All right, just hover. Are you using a PC? Hover near the bottom and it'll open up a band of choices.
There we go. There we go. There's
Hi,
Ben.
Ben. Mary, are you going to share your camera?
No, not
How you
today.
doing?
I'll just be there with the others.
Okay, Judy, can you hear me? Judy? Wherever you are. Okay, Judy is still trying to sign in, I guess.
So who's making the Bloody Marys?
Well, mine came out prepared. I got a mix. My neighbor went and got it for me. So.
Yeah, right.
I don't
Breaking
know.
tradition. I'm having Bailey's.
All right, we just got somebody calling in. Who was on 551?
Me, Helene.
Oh, Helene, welcome. Glad to have you join us.
Janet? Thank
Can
you.
hear
Who
us?
is this?
Helene,
Janet?
we can hear you, Helene. You're on a phone?
Yep, I'm on phone.
Good, welcome.
Thank you, guys. Is this Janet?
This is Amy.
Okay.
But Robert is on the call. He's on the call.
Bye, guys.
And
Yeah,
also-
I heard Robert. Okay.
Now that we've pinned it.
Becca, I see you. I'm on, but you can't see me. It's Mom.
Hi,
Look at
Devin.
that.
Mary.
I'm not sure. It's a
Hi.
David and Mary.
While you all are here, before we get into it, there's a video that's connected with this. And I have pictures of almost everybody I see today, I think, that video. Mind you, some of you look a little different and much, much younger. But
They look
try to
younger
watch it
today,
for your
right?
face when it plays.
You tell
What's that?
Even you, Grace, are younger.
About 2 or 3 more minutes for everyone to just get their, I think everybody's logged out.
Thank you.
Taking over the screen. Inviting that person to our wedding.
Hey, Rob.
Right there. Oh. Seen him on our wedding event.
I think a lot of you don't know who I am. I'm Francis Litwer's son. Horace Litwer's grandson.
So I'm gonna. You're on. I just gotta slide that. Oh, my name.
Yeah, that's a window on top of it.
I don't know how to.
Try pushing and pulling that window up away. No, this one right here. Isn't that one?
I never figured this out.
Can you pick it up and move it? You're right. Okay.
I have to remember.
Hi, Nancy.
Can you see me?
I see you with some children.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to change it to the live.
That's what they're
stream.
showing.
I don't know how to do that.
So then I'm not gonna see people. Oh, there I am.
Came on.
That's all it's on?
Oh, no.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Randy.
Hello.
Hi, sweetie. How you holding up?
Okay.
Sending love, honey. Sending hugs.
Hi, Randy.
Whatever.
Hi.
Richard, bring that
Rhoda Nathan.
camera down a little bit.
We'll just have mute.
Jennifer, hi.
No.
Is here
Yeah,
too.
good.
How are you?
My wife,
Good,
Nika.
thank you.
We're pretty in it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, much better.
Except that baby got this. But this? No. We're in it. We have to disconnect.
Hey, Rich.
We have 41,
How you guys doing?
we have 41 people attending, so you may need to go to a second screen. There are multiple pages for those of you who are saying, where's my brother? Where's my uncle?
click
There
on
are multiple screens.
I never said that, Amy.
What'd you say?
I said I never asked where my brother or sisters are.
I understand. Hi, Bree. Welcome.
Bree, hi. Jib, hi. Amy, can I just take a second because I'm so stunned and so pleased that so many of the cousins on my father's side are joining us. And they have never met, my children have never met them. So if I could just introduce them, Ian and Bree and Ian's wife, Michaela, and Bree's husband, Jib. This is my cousin, Steve. Where is he?
Steve, speak up.
He's the cool guy down there. Where did Steve go?
Everybody gets to go to the second page.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
I'm here.
There you are. Okay. And that's my cousin Steve and Steve's children, Jennifer and Chris.
You can highlight them.
Who are your second cousins? And then also Becca, Rich's daughter, she's your second cousin.
Just don't do the once removed. It's too early in the day.
I'm not going to do this one.
Yeah, don't start with that.
And Judy, Rich and Judy, they're on the phone, right? Is that right?
No, they're there.
Yeah.
I'm here. Yeah, Judy is.
Laura.
Rich is
I
trying
just thought it
to
was
join.
Okay, I just wanted to introduce everybody because they've never met.
I'd introduce Margot too.
Yes, please do, Judy.
So, hey, Margot. Yeah, Margot's on the second page. Say hello. She's waving.
My wife Maris just joined us.
Most of us, Janet, since most of us don't really know at least 50% of the people in the room, why don't we go around the room
No,
and everybody
let's not
announce
do
who
that.
they are and how they're related?
Just come for a little while.
We just start that.
No roll call.
No roll call?
No
All
roll
right.
call.
Oh, you mean we're on twice?
I don't have to hold it here, though. Yeah,
All right, guys.
we're
I
fine.
think
We're fine.
everyone who's here is here.
Why don't you full screen it? Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all for coming here today and being here to join us. And everyone, we're all one big family, but being here to join, specifically my mom and her brother David. I know the hardest part over the last 2 weeks has been not being able to spend time with her family. Obviously, we're all in very unusual circumstances right now. So, you know, this is pretty unprecedented for us. But we had this idea that, you know, a lot of people have been doing, who have been going through similar circumstances, to kind of bring everyone together. And I've told my mother and my family this, but I'll tell everyone this. You know, a few months ago, we had the opportunity to have a 100th birthday party for my grandmother, which many of you were at. And, you know, in hindsight, it was, it ended up being more of a, you know, it turned out to be a living memorial service. And not many people have that opportunity in life to hear everyone who loves them, or a lot of people who love them, tell them how much they love them. So even though, you know, we had the missed opportunity, or we were unfortunate enough to not be able to be by my grandmother, with my grandmother as she passed, we were all with her a few months ago, and she did feel how much she was loved. So with that, I think we're gonna get started. As you know, Amy sent out a program before that we're gonna try to stick to. Everyone should be able to get a chance to speak by the end. But we'll kind of go in order until we get to the open comments at the end. So first, I'm going to invite Matt Abel up. He's going to be our first musical performance, and he'll be singing Ailey, Ailey.
So just to give you context, I am Lillian's great-great-nephew, married to Lauren, and Lauren's mom is Amy, and Amy is Lillian's niece. So this is, I'll sing this in Hebrew and in English.
Amy up there.
Okay, I saw that too. Yeah.
Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, achov hayam rishrush shamayim berak hashamayim tvilat adam achov hayam rishrush shamayim berak hashamayim tvilat adam. Oh God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the water, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of man, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer
Matt, that was incredible as always. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
I'm realizing this format doesn't give us the opportunity to exchange awkward handshakes or hugs after the performance, but no, I would give you one right now if I could. Next, I'm going to invite my mother up, Lillian's daughter, Janet, to speak.
Thanks, Ian. I was going to speak off the cuff, but then I thought I might ramble, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to read this. And I want to reiterate, thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you particularly to Amy for organizing this. And to reiterate what Ian said, the circumstances, as I know they were for her cousin, Al Moss, who predeceased her by just a few weeks. No one of us could be there with our parent at the most critical time in their lives, and now we cannot be together to grieve, which finally to me seems like a natural, instinctive, and urgent ritual. There's no end to what I could say about my mother, so I've decided to focus on just two aspects, both of which are reflected in every single email, letter, and phone call I received from people who knew her. Said one, I loved her zest for life, her love of meeting new people, and I always found talking with her both interesting and calming. And so the first quality is my mother's intense curiosity about engagement with and interest in other people. Not only was she vibrant and sharp, and sometimes sharp's opposite, blunt, but she was a superb conversationalist. Psychologists say that 80% of being a good conversationalist is listening, truly listening. I have a close friend in Princeton with whom I talk a lot about why some people are so engaged with others, such good listeners and such good interrogators of others, and why most people are not. So a few months ago, my friend who knew my mother asked me to ask my mother if she knew she was such a good conversationalist and whether it was sincere, draining, or both. I have already relayed to a few of you what my mother's response to this question was, so please forgive me for repeating myself today. My mother answered that she was interested in people's lives, and my father was too. And therefore, she had a lot of questions for them. After all, she said, they had the answers. So she asked the questions. But I thought about her answer, and I responded to her that it seemed to me that there was a step before her questioning that she had not considered. Why did she have questions? Curiosity, innate curiosity about people, their lives, the world, politics, relationships. That curiosity had to come first. And two brief examples. First, my passion for films comes directly from my mother. When I was about 6 years old, she took me to a movie theater to see the Apu trilogy from India. How was it that a 35-year-old woman living in an isolated redneck area of upstate New York decided that we should start seeing foreign films? After viewing them, no matter what age I was, we always discussed them. And we were still discussing movies until she fell last week. And it was so gratifying to her, as it is to me, that that is a tradition and a passion that has been handed down to my own children. The second example, in recent years, I begged my mother to have aides come in for at least a few hours a day. She protested this idea furiously, claiming that she did not want to pay strangers to sit and look at her all day. I'm sure many of you have heard similar protests from your own parents. But everyone in our family knew that that was not what would happen. She would develop a sincere interest in her aides, their families, their own family histories, and would look forward to their coming. And naturally, the aides, being heard and having someone sincerely interested in them, even though they were there for so few hours, became devoted to my mother. On the evening before she went to the hospital, Monday, April 22nd, my mother told me that she was going to help her aide get an article written in the Schenectady Gazette about the aide's mother, who was now making surgical masks instead of sewing swimming pool covers. The second attribute, the one which not only drew people to my mother, but made her the magnet in a room full of people, was her sense of humor. She was funny, and she told funny stories well, yes, but she also loved jokes and loved hearing funny things that other people said, especially George and Bree and Ian and their spouses. When the pandemic and the consequent lockdown at her residence started to drain her spirit, she and I promised that we would check in with each other every day. I knew that not seeing others was particularly hard on a person who was literally lit up by other people. and she remarked on it a little bit to me. So even up until the night before she fell, I made a point of ending every conversation we had with one of the jokes or memes about the coronavirus circulating on the internet. Even if I had to describe the picture accompanying the text, she laughed her head off. That was how we ended each conversation, and it momentarily diffused the intense loneliness of the lockdown. Curiosity and humor, remarkable traits, but they don't necessarily mean that someone is a nice person, a hero, particularly caring or generous. And yet I think that curiosity inevitably leads to compassion and the ability to empathize with others. And a sense of humor leads to the development of a more expansive perspective, and thus the ability to find others fascinating, to appreciate their differences, to forgive them, to cherish them. Sometimes I got impatient with my mother. She was still so quick, so sharp, so engaged, I forgot she was 100. 8 years ago, she was playing tennis. 4 years ago, she was driving. 2 years ago, she was beating 7 opponents at the time in online Scrabble, and you know who you are, and doing the Times crossword. But all of her life, she was curious and funny, not always diplomatic, but always, always interested and engaged with others. We all wanted to be with her. Every day I hear something that I want to tell her, because she was the person I told everything to. What an appreciative audience she was. I knew that she would be curious to hear more, and I knew that she would find the humor in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom. That was beautiful. Okay, next I'm going to invite Robert to speak. Robert was my grandmother's nephew.
Thanks, Ian. And first of all, I want you to know that that dog behind you is absolutely beautiful. So, well, what's his or her name?
This is Maisie.
Okay, Maisie. I'm ready. In my early days, it seemed a little bit confusing that our family could live so far apart. We did have Grandma Harriet and the Binders relatively close by, of which we saw quite often. And then there was my mother's side of the family, who were approximately an hour away, and who were also we saw quite often. So having the Stearns, the Hales, and the Mantells so far away was very hard to reconcile, especially at the age of 2. When my mother and father lost their child, Billy, Aunt Lillian and Uncle Lou thought it would be a good idea to take Janet and me for the week to give my parents a chance to mourn. I may have been approximately 2.5 at the time, but my memories are relatively clear, mostly because I may have picked up PTSD during my visit. No, it wasn't Lillian's cooking, and it wasn't Uncle Lou doing exercises at the wee hours of the morning. Or it was Uncle Luke grunting on the floor next to me. So,
That's what you remember from your childhood, right?
At 2.5, I might add. I'm losing my place here. It was more of an unfortunate incident that Aunt Lillian and I had with an adorable mole I had found by their steps. I didn't know until later that Aunt Lillian had the worst phobia regarding rodents, but those stories are for another time. One afternoon, I caught a mole by the steps leading to the driveway to the front door. So excited, Aunt Lillian helped me research the diet of moles. We wound up putting the mole in a large white plastic can, then went around capturing insects and putting them in a bunch of grass in the can as well. Mostly because our research unveiled that moles eat insects and grass. We should have researched what the insects ate, because the next morning we went out to see my pet, and the insects had devoured the mole. To this day, I still have visions of insects crawling out of the eye sockets of the adorable pet. What's the matter? No good. I'll have to rewrite that, I guess. I'm getting edited on the fly here. I did talk to Aunt Lillian just a few weeks ago about this visit. Our recollection of the story did not jive. As we have learned all too well, Aunt Lillian's memory should never have been challenged, even against a 2-year-old with PTSD. The years went by and there wasn't a tremendous amount of interaction between us, except for the occasional wedding or bar mitzvah. So it was a glorious surprise when my father, Aunt Shirley, and Aunt Lillian took a road trip down to Baltimore for what I believe was a precursor to Aunt Rhoda's unveiling. As somber a purpose for the road trip was, we spent 6 hours rip-roaring laughing, mostly from the jocularity centered around the crossword puzzle we all had been struggling through. The recipient for most of our lampooning was the town of Niskayuna. The name itself writes its own material. The 4 of us stayed in a hotel in Baltimore, not exactly the most posh accommodations. The next morning, Aunt Shirley complained that there was a young couple in the alleyway most of the night training for the space program. When my Aunt Shirley turned to us in the morning and said the guy kept her up all night screaming, "I'm going to send you to the moon," at that moment, I think I had a mild stroke. To hear my reserved, dignified school mom aunt saying such things triggered a PTSD episode. The same laughter continued on the ride back. When we got back to Aunt Shirley's house and dropped off Aunt Lillian and Shirley, we had some lovely parting words, something to the effect of how nice it was to finally get to know each other. I do wonder what it might have been like living closer together. Growing up near Janet and David would have been a lot of fun. As I only recently found out, David shares the same boisterous laugh and sharp sense of humor as his mother and sister. Aunt Lillian, Alexa keeps asking about you. I think she misses you the most, as much as I miss you. Our conversations, your laugh, and our communal political anguish. And rest assured, every time my phone beeps with your favorite technology, call waiting, I will be reminded that every time the phone rings, call waiting, a Meshuggah gets her wings. So that was it. So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much. Next, I'm going to invite my grandmother's niece, Judy, to come speak.
Hi. I'm far less organized than everybody else who's spoken so far. Can you hear me though? You can hear me, okay. I'm outside, so if you can't, please let me know. I was asked to think of things about Lillian and times and the past, and I have a lot of trouble remembering yesterday, so it's taken a little bit of time, but I wanted to tell you all about the visits we would have to Lil and Lou and Janet and David when my sister and I were little. We would go there 2 or 3 times a year and spend a weekend usually. We'd go, we'd play endless games of oh hell, we'd play music, we'd tell jokes. And Lillian didn't participate in any of that I remember. What I remember is that she was in the kitchen virtually the whole time, cooking breakfast and lunch and dinner and breakfast and lunch and dinner and taking care of us all and washing dishes. I have no recollection of whether my mother helped her. I'm sure she must have, but I remember Lillian doing a lot of that. We all laughed a lot. all the time. I don't know what any of us laughed at, but we did a lot of laughing. At night, Janet and my sister Laura and I would spend time upstairs. We all slept together in the upstairs room, and we played a absolutely ridiculous game, singing songs to ourselves. Probably the most ridiculous game ever invented. Anyway, we listened, as we were playing our game, we would listen to our parents downstairs, who were probably playing bridge and doing a lot of laughing as well. They laughed constantly, and every so often in the midst of that, we'd hear, "Ah!" And I didn't do that right, but the way Lillian laughed, that scream she had, that exactly. Yes, Laura. Where she would just suddenly scream, and it was always a little frightening, but then we knew it was laughter and that they were having a great old time. I should mention that Lillian saved me on multiple occasions. As you probably are aware, her husband Lou had a very, very dry sense of humor. I mean, dry to the point of I didn't always know he was kidding. I remember one time in particular sitting in the kitchen listening to him as he was telling me some incredible cock and bull story. And I was listening and I was shaking my head, and she said, "Lou, what's the matter with you?" And then of course I realized that he was kidding and he was pulling my leg, and it was only her saying so that let me know that. Lillian taught me the words nudnik and shmagegi, which I never would have known without her input. And I thank her for that, because I was a nudnik and that really helped me understand things. She played Scrabble. I know my sister played online Scrabble with her for years. I stopped playing with Scrabble with her probably 20-something years ago because I lost really badly and I decided I just didn't want to do it anymore. She and Lou and Marilyn and Sid, my parents, played bridge and tennis all the time. They were very competitive. I know that it was always a real competition between them. I cannot for the life of me remember who won those games. If Janet, if you know, if David knows, I don't know who. You're muted, Janet, if you're talking. Janet, unmute. But anyway,
Your parents won, Judy, you know that.
Oh, huh, you'd think I'd have remembered that. Anyway, a more recent story of Lillian, and my favorite recent story of her, which really shows her spirit. I visited her, it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, something like that, in Florida. And I got there to her place, and she said, "Oh, I hurt my shoulder." And I said, "How did you hurt your shoulder?" And I remember she was, what, 95, 96 at the time. "How did you hurt your shoulder?" "I was doing push-ups and I hurt my shoulder." And I just love that she was busily doing push-ups at 96, even if she did hurt her shoulder.
Mom,
So
I think I was with you when
Yes.
you visited her that time.
Yes. And yeah, and we were both a little bit surprised that she was just still doing push-ups. Anyway, I will miss her. I'll miss her energy, her spirit, her sense of humor, and all of that about her. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. I think for anyone who knew her, the sound of her laughter will not be something we all forget for a long time. So throughout this memorial, we're gonna be peppering in a few musical acts. Obviously, earlier we heard Matt sing Ailey Ailey, and next we're going to invite Catherine Needleman to come perform. Catherine is the principal oboist for the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, and she's going to play Stardust for us. Let me know if any of that is incorrect, Catherine.
No, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. For anyone who doesn't know, I am, I think, the Lillian's great niece by marriage, but we always just went by great, 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 great niece, and she and Nick always had a joke. Nick is my husband, who's actually biologically related to Lillian, even though I want to be biologically related to Lillian. Oh, it's because it's going through here. Sorry, I'm going to talk loud because I have you on something that's going to sound good for the oboe, but it sounds bad for my voice. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm yelling. Well,
You're good.
I really wanted to be biologically related to Lillian, but it was my husband who got to be biologically related.
You don't need to scream. We hear you pretty good.
Okay. Well, Janet said something about Lillian being an appreciative audience, and Lillian was certainly that for us. And Lillian was always very supportive of whatever oboe shenanigans I had going on, and she was always a great listener, not just to me, but also to my kids, you know, as beginning little string players, and she always made them feel, you know, very happy to play for her. So we actually just all played for her on the telephone just a few weeks before she passed away. And the last phone call that we had, my daughter sang a madrigal for her from the 16th century. And I, again, just like Janet was saying, I couldn't believe I was speaking to a 100-year-old because she said, Catherine, what is a madrigal? Is that a liturgical thing or is it secular? And, you know, as a musician, I couldn't answer the question for Lillian. And I said, Lillian, I'm sorry, I just don't know. You know, and I said, but I can look it up for you. So she's like, yeah, I can't look anything up. I can't see. So I was just kind of Lillian's Google for a while, you know, reading the Google to her because she had so many questions. You know, she was such an engaged listener. Anyway, I had a couple little tunes that I could play that I presented to Amy, and Amy picked this one, and I want to read the lyrics of the first verse to you. I'm going to play an oboe version, so you won't get to actually hear the lyrics. And now the purple dusk of twilight time steals across the meadows of my heart. High up in the sky, the little stars climb, always reminding me that we're apart. You wander down the lane and far away, leaving me a song that will not die. Love is now the stardust of yesterday, the music of years gone by. So this song was written by Hoagie Carmichael, was very popular when Lillian was a young girl, probably 8 or 9 years old.
Thank you, Catherine. That was great. Thank you so much. later on in the memorial, each of Catherine's kids will be performing individually for us. So stay tuned for that. Right now, we're going to move back to hear some memories. Next, I'm going to invite Nancy Brown to talk. Nancy was not related by blood, but she was as close to my grandmother as many of her children, if not closer, maybe, ... So Nancy, come on, how are you doing? Are you there, Nancy?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, I'm not great at this, and as you can see, you can hardly see me. That is a picture of myself with two of my little African friends, and I didn't mean to put that there, but I don't know how to get rid of it. So, so there it is, and I'm behind there. So
do you need help taking off the virtual background?
Yeah, do you know how to do that, Lauren?
Yes, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there's a little video camera and then an up caret. Click on the up caret,
okay.
And go to virtual picture, and then remove. Just put none.
I have the, oh, wait a minute. Okay, the up arrow. Sorry about this, guys. Okay.
There's a blank screen. It's not none. Is it?
Oh. Go to choose virtual picture and then click none. N-O-N-E is what it says on mine. So I don't know what Nancy says.
Mine has FaceTime HD camera, choose virtual background, which I didn't choose, but it's there.
Click on the choose virtual background and then select the option that looks like the least of a virtual background.
None. Okay, good.
Okay. It looks like a Doors album, Nancy.
Doors album. Okay, does this do it? Okay.
My picture to be muted too.
Oh,
looks great, Nancy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for helping me through that. I just loved Lillian. You know, I know everybody did here. And the first thing I think that's most important to say, it's not about me or even some of the memories that I'll share in a minute, but I think the most important thing to say is that she loved all of us really very much. But I think Janet and David and Bree and Ian were hands down just the love of her life, the loves of her life. So that doesn't diminish any of the rest of us, but I just needed to say that. I was lucky enough to know Lillian and the rest of you for almost 20 years. I first knew David, and he brought me to many of the family gatherings, and I'll never forget them, those Thanksgivings at Waverly Place, and beyond. We had some wonderful gatherings, not at Waverly Place as well, and also the bar mitzvahs, the bat mitzvahs, and graduations, weddings, and really the full catastrophe, as Zorba the Greek put it. What a wonderful thing to be part of her family. And over the years, watching Lillian dance at parties, and I think she once took salsa lessons. I understood there was a picture of her dancing on the refrigerator. And playing tennis after her own fashion. Basketball, Ian, I remember playing basketball out in your mom's and dad's front yard, and your grandma was just as good as any of us. She was amazing. Another little memory I have is just, I think we were gonna have Thanksgiving at Lauren's house, and we had to take a train. We had to run across a train yard and upstairs and across a platform and down again. And has to be in her early 90s. She had her suitcase, and we were racing, and I could barely keep up with her, but she did it. And it's that incredible vitality. Nothing was going to keep her down. So you get the picture. I thought maybe she might live forever after a while. It seemed like she might. And at least I was getting convinced that she was going to outlive me. But I mean, no one lives forever, but except in our hearts and our minds, and really in all the ways that she affected us and influenced our lives. And many of those were extremely powerful and lasting. If you have any of Lillian's genes in you, you will notice as time goes by, there's certain things that will come out that are like Lillian, and you can't escape that, and you shouldn't even try. To go back to somewhat more mundane kind of issues, I know I don't have to tell anybody about her prowess at Scrabble, but it still was a big part of her life. And I am proud to be one of the many, many people who were beaten time and again by her. I don't know anyone except maybe that Scrabble boyfriend of many years back, of Lauren's, who had such an encyclopedic memory for Scrabble words. So she'd say, "It's a word. I don't know what it means, but it's a word." So she would know it was a word. And indeed it was. And you could always ask her, "Okay, Lillian, are there any 2-letter words beginning with C?" "There are no 2-letter words beginning with C," she'd say. "But what about V?" "No 2-letter words beginning with V." So, I mean, she didn't even miss a beat. It was like, okay, I don't know who I'm going to ask now, things like that. But I did read that Scrabble was invented during the Great Depression by somebody named Alfred Butts, at B-U-T-T-S. And it was called Lexica or Crisscross Words. You probably all know this, but it became successful in 1952 as Scrabble. And that was the year David and I were born. And I think Lillian probably bought one of the very first Scrabble games. And I think she used that same game her whole life, because the box was falling apart and it was all tied up. And it would probably be worth a fortune if the box had survived. I do remember going, whenever David and I would stop by or visit, we wouldn't stop by, we'd take a trip to visit because we're both in Massachusetts. She always had something cooking for us. We were always late, and she realized we were always going to be late, so that was that. But she had really good red lentil soup and cauliflower and cheese soup. And at Thanksgiving, I do remember the pumpkin pie that had a very undetectable amount of sugar in it. I didn't like it, but that's okay. She loved it that way. And you know, and that's probably why she was so healthy. I remember sitting around the table, making Thanksgiving wishes for ourselves. And then one year we did it for each other. And one thing I remember, I got Bree. Bree was my person I had to speak for. And that was, I remember speaking for Bree, and I said, I want to be able to make a difference in the world. And Bree said, yes. So I think I had gotten to know Bree and many of the other folks like family. So you really are my family. And Lillian's one of my mothers. She made Mandelbrot, which I'm sure you all got a chance to eat, that very hard crescent cookie, which almost broke your teeth, but if you dipped it, it was good. And Mandel means almond and brot means bread. She gave me the recipe. We were sitting around her kitchen table having tea and Mandelbrot, and she told us there was an old Yiddish lullaby that always made her cry. And you might remember that lullaby. It's called Rozinken und Mandeln, Raisins and Almonds. And I don't think we have time to play it now, but I would suggest, if you feel like having a nice, just listening to a beautiful, beautiful lullaby, thinking about Lillian after this, Google the almonds and raisins, and get the Sarah Rice performance. She was a performer in Sweeney Todd, and it is really beautiful. And that I would suggest that you take a listen to. So the final thing I wanted to mention was I was really so sorry to have missed her 100th birthday. She told me I was invited, even though I wasn't exactly blood relative, but I was in Africa, and I was on a drumming trip to Guinea, Africa, which is why that picture was up there, I guess. I was in a little village near the far eastern border with Mali called Oroko. And I happened to mention to my djembe master, whose name was Wataba, that I had a good friend. I considered her my second mother, really, who was going to turn 100. And what my drumming master did was he gathered all of the women of the village who could sing and dance, and he and his brother sat out in the little center of the village with their djembe, and they played a memorial, a birthday party. They called it a fete in honor of Lillian. And the words for this were all in Malinke. And of course, I couldn't understand a word. So they were out there dancing, and Lillian would have loved the dancing. In their colorful garments, they sang a really energetic birthday song in Malinke. And the only words I could understand every now and then were, Lillian! And then there would be some more words, and then there would be, Lillian! So I have a feeling she might have heard it all the way back in New York, back on January, was it 12th, when she turned 100. So I wanted to share that video with her. Maybe I'll get a chance to share it with you. Anyway, when I think of Lillian, I did talk to her the Wednesday before the surgery, and she was very serious. She said, I have a lot of complicated feelings, she said. But then she was her usual self, and she talked about it and how, she hoped that, if she got through it, she knew she had a long road to hoe to get better, but I think she was up for it. And she knew the seriousness of the whole thing. But she knew that that's what she wanted to do, because she wanted to be alive to the fullest sense of the term. She didn't want to be bedridden, and she was very brave, and she very much knew what was happening. She did make me laugh while we were on that phone. She told me about talking to Helen. She couldn't hear me some of the time, and I couldn't hear her. And she said, whenever I talk to Helen, it's the same way. We talk, and she says, what? Or I say what? Or we misunderstand each other. And she says, finally, Helen says, well, it's been nice talking to you, Lillian. And I realized she hasn't heard a word I've said. So that was that. But I do want to say, when I think about Lillian, and I think about, I cry, but I also will laugh, because some things are so funny. And there's this joy of life that she showed us all. And I think the best thing that we can do, if we can do it once we grieve enough, is to hold her in our hearts and just live life to the fullest, and know that would make her the happiest, and it would honor her the most. And remember, you guys are the love of her life. So thanks for letting me be here with you. I love you all.
Thank you, Nancy. That was really great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We're going to get another memory now from my father and Lillian's son-in-law, George Theodorus. George.
Mute. Oh, okay. I think Janet wants to say something before me.
No, I had a Scrabble anecdote, because Nancy reminded me that the the 2-letter words were just killers. And my brother, David, I don't know if you remember this, he was playing with my mother. He got so frustrated with her 2-letter words And finally he said to her, you know what? You should have been an Asian tour guide.
Oh,
That's because all the words were Asian. Okay.
Was good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be perfect if it's like your.
Shall I, ready to go? Hi, Bree. Shall I start?
go ahead, Dad.
Okay. I don't see myself, but anyway. First, I would like to thank Amy for organizing this get together, and Ian for being the master of ceremonies, and for putting all this together with family and friends. I would also like to say hello to everybody present today. It's great to see everybody. I have about 5 minutes to talk about. It will feel like 3 minutes to some of you. It may feel like 7 minutes to some of you, but on average, it'll be 5 minutes. Okay, we had recently a power outage in Princeton. It was nighttime, so everything went dark. The TV went off, the lights went off, the computer went off, the room went quiet. It happened so suddenly that I just sat surprised and shocked. As I sat there, I tried to remember the details of the room and what the rest of the house was like, where the furniture was, where the flashlight was, and how to get there without bumping into a chair or worse, tripping over my dog, Pengu. I will remember a lot of details about my surroundings, but not everything. I had not always paid attention to what was around me. When Lillian passed away a few days ago, our lights also went out. She was no longer there. Everything about Lillian was now in our memories and heads. So today, I would like to take this wonderful opportunity to tell you what my memories of Lillian I have. I would like to start by quoting a young Irish writer, Sally Rooney, that made a big impression on me. Sally Rooney believed that our personalities are shaped by the people who we are with. Our behaviors and actions are modified by those who are close to us, mostly close family. You will see the relevance soon. 50 years ago, I first met Lillian, as I had traveled from England, where I was a 20-year-old student, to visit Janet in upstate New York. It was a cold December, and it was in the middle of the night, and a horrible snowstorm was taking place, with 6 feet snow on the ground. The Lillian I met in those days was a young school teacher, dynamic, funny, and with a warm personality. Though her first reaction upon meeting me was to burst into tears. Who was this scruffy-looking guy her daughter Janet was interested in? Lou said he was looking forward to the baseball season. I got to know Lillian as Harriet's daughter. Lillian will revert back to a young, rebellious daughter in the presence of Harriet. Harriet was Lillian's mother. It is a crazy world, Harriet will say. We each thought she meant us. Lillian was a very independent woman, but very much defined by her very funny and charismatic husband, Lou. Lou was looking forward to the baseball season. It was also interesting to watch Lillian's interactions with her siblings, Arnie and Shirley, who Lillian was very fond of. I was intrigued by these family members, particularly Arnie. Arnie reminded me of an Irish tough guy, a good fella. Hey kid, did I tell you about that time I... ... Lillian was also very fond of her sister Rhoda, who she saw less frequently because of living further away. Lillian became very animated and lively when her nieces and nephews were around. How fond she was of all of them. I remember Robert Seligson, coming to visit us in Schenectady on his way to the State University of New York at Albany. He was 18 years old and with the looks of a movie star. The Seligsson's redhead gang, Richard, Puffy, Janet, also Willie, though not a redhead. Both Lillian and Lou got a kick out of Arnie's kids, and sometimes literally a kick. Lillian enjoyed being with her children, Janet and David. She was very proud of both of them, but will rarely actually say it. Just like Harriet will never praise Lillian to her face. Lillian enjoyed talking about words and movies with Janet. She could not get enough of David's music. David, a very talented musician and composer and somewhat eccentric. Lou is looking forward to the baseball season. She loved her grandchildren, Bree and Ian, who she adored and saw very often. Lillian also loved their choices of spouses, Michaela and JB. Lillian taught us that there is nothing in this world better than a bowl of good soup. She loved good hot soup. That was Lillian as a daughter, mother, wife, aunt, teacher, and sister. Sally Rooney will say that Lillian's personality was defined by all these roles. Lillian was also very tolerant, up to a point. We saw Lillian reach that point in some of our family visits to Schenectady. Janet and I are incorrigible animal lovers. Through the decades, we had a string of neurotic, difficult rescue dogs that relish annoying Lillian. Janet and I worked hard on naming our dogs, though they will end up being called Shmagegi, Mashuganat, Nutnik, and other Yiddish names by Lillian. In more recent years, last 10 years, I got to know Lillian better and better, also in a different way. During those years, Janet and I spent a lot of time with Lillian, for one reason or another, sometimes for no reason. We went on many memorable trips, Cancun in Mexico, Ireland, Florida Keys, San Francisco to attend Lillian's sister-in-law, Esther's grandmother, Becca's wedding. Basically, we went to attend Becca's wedding.
And Esther's birthday.
And Esther's birthday. So we're very lucky to get to do both things. I also remember Lillian walking up those San Francisco hills, and she was already 86, but she was able to do it and never complained. The reason Lillian was a different version of Lillian, as charming, witty, engaging, smart, and knowledgeable of current events, music, theater, and books. I look forward to being with her. I enjoy her conversation and genuine interest in others. The Glen Eddy staff loved her. Lillian knew all the names of the young servers in the dining room, and Lillian had taken a new role to all of us, the role of a friend, no longer burdened by any of her previous roles. Lillian had come into her own. Lillian had arrived. And finally, well, I think this is all I have. Sorry. This is all I have, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Deb. That rings true for a lot of us. I think everyone who knows Lillian kind of noticed that differently than a lot of people as they age, she became more open-minded and more tolerant and more fun to be around as she got older. We're going to move along now. We're going to move to the toast portion of our program. So we're going to go back to Northport, Long Island, to Lauren Hale, the great niece of Lillian.
Hi, all. Thanks so much for letting me initiate the toast. Just by way of context, my mom is Amy and her mother was Rhoda, Lillian's older sister. And I was in graduate school in Princeton when my grandmother, Rhoda, died. And I think just because we lived, or I was in the same place as Janet and George and Bree and Ian, who were in high school, That allowed me to get closer to Lillian over the years. And it really strengthened during those 5 years that I was in Princeton. I remember Lillian coming to a class that I was a TA in. I mean, can you imagine? And then laughing when I like wasn't paying attention and got in trouble or something. Janet always tells that story. I have other memories of Lillian in her 90s playing football in my mom's backyard. And more recently, last summer, before my 9-year-old or our 9-year-old was going up to camp with my mom, Lillian, I was just struck by how curious she was to engage in conversation with Isaac, who is 9 years old. She asked him what sports he likes to play. And he, of course, named a sport that she had never heard of, Gaga ball, which is what all the kids are playing these days. And it's an Israeli invented sport or game, ball game. And I just imagined her being, I pictured a typical person would say, oh, sounds nice. But instead she wanted to know the rules and started thinking about strategies for how the ball would be played. It's like soccer, but with hands only. And I just thought, what a fascinating person. And so after I said goodbye to Isaac and my mom, I sat around and got the chance to play Scrabble with her for an hour or two. And she just so joyfully said, isn't this fun? And I'm so glad I got to play that last game of Scrabble with her. And even though I was about to take a 3-hour drive solo back to Long Island, she was like, would you like a Bloody Mary? No, I don't want a Bloody Mary now, but I would like to raise my Bloody Mary now. And I want you all, my husband has one too, if the rest of you get up whatever you're drinking, please let's give a toast to Lillian's. The 3 words I have for her are vivacity, curiosity, and playfulness. Thank you, Lil.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, guys. We're going to continue on right now. So, as many of you know, my uncle David Stern, Lillian's son, is extremely talented and accomplished pianist. We're gonna play a pre-recorded composition of his right now. Just a heads up off of that, we're gonna go seamlessly into an intermission. So I'm not gonna stop, or I'm not gonna come in after the intermission or after David to take you there. So we'll break for 5 minutes. You guys are encouraged to help yourself to free food in your own kitchens if you would like. And we'll meet back here. So take it away, David. Might be some technical issues. We'll be with you soon.
We're so lucky
David,
to have a
David?
professional TV producer here with us.
Yeah.
Where's that Emmy?
Well, Georgie, we're only 3 minutes in your speech, so maybe you can complete with a few more minutes.
David, do you hear me?
I want to know who the producer is.
Hello.
Hi, David.
Hi.
Hi. We're ready for your gospel.
Okay. Well, you know what? Accomplished pianist. I wouldn't say that because I can't play my own piece. It's too hard. But I would like to play another piece that really cuts to the chase. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Of course, whatever you feel like it.
Okay, and the music is not pre-recorded, so it's going to sound like someone playing a xylophone, pretty much. But we'll do the best we can. Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear this? Can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Does it sustain?
Yes.
It does sustain. Okay, great.
Thank you, David. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Very good.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jack, for the slideshow.
That was beautiful.
I think our moderator has gone on hiatus. I think we're gonna do, oh, there
Yeah,
you go.
and the slides have more to show. I'm not quite sure why they stopped, but that's up to Amy. Amy is doing that.
We're gonna just take a little break here, guys. We'll meet back in 5 minutes. You
Okay.
watching or whatever you need to do.
We're going to leave the slides running.
Okay, thank you, Jack. They're great.
Two of my favorite shots. That's it, folks.
That's great, Jack.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Who was she playing tennis with in that photo?
Marilyn, Judy and Laura's mother, the one, that was one of the better games when they weren't so competitive.
Got it.
Oh, I think
Is that
they
you,
were probably
Janet?
pretty competitive.
No, that's Amy, actually.
Oh.
I wasn't born yet. That's me there, holding Janet, my cousin Janet.
Oh. And that was Arnie.
Right.
Doesn't everybody love my mom's suit? I do.
Jack, this is very well done. Everyone, we're about 2 minutes away from starting.
Okay.
Start at
There are those redheads.
Awesome.
Jack, is that a file that you can send by email?
What's that?
Is that a file that could be sent by email?
The slideshow?
Yeah.
I'm sure we can get a copy to you.
That would be wonderful. I'd really love to have that.
Hey,
Jack, you doctored up those pictures, didn't you? Because our hair wasn't that red. You did something to that picture.
I know, it looks touched up, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does.
No, it was really that red because mine was too. I have old pictures. It was the same color. It's hard to believe, but.
Looked like the Wizard of Oz when they made it color.
That's true. That's true. But the dyes they used in those days weren't quite as accurate as now.
All right, guys, we're gonna get going just as soon as the picture passes.
That's the best picture of Ian right there.
Ian?
Yes, David, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say some words about my mom.
Yeah, welcome to you first here. Let me just, everyone, we're gonna be restarting right now.
Jack, where is this picture from when my grandma is dancing with this nice guy?
We don't really know. But somebody took it.
That wasn't your wedding, Becca, was it?
Possibly.
No, because, well, I think it's a
No.
picture I took somewhere.
Oh.
Not sure.
All right, guys, we're gonna start up again.
Is that
We're
guy
gonna-
here?
We're gonna
That's
go
the dance
to
with? Is he one of us? Is he here?
Is he among us?
David. David would like to say some words, so we're gonna go to him first before we go to my sister. David, you're on.
Hello?
Hi, David. We got you.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ian. Hi, all. I just wanted to say that, well, that piece was called The Nancy, dedicated to my friend Nancy, who loved my mother dearly. I mean, truly dearly, and they got along really like mother and daughter, as she said. I just wanted to say that my mom was a spark plug. She loved doing what she loved doing. She never got really good at any of the physical things she did, tennis or whatever, because that takes practice. But I do remember that she was, when she was in her early 70s, I think, she took up flamenco dance, of all things, the hardest dance of all. And one Thanksgiving gave us a performance which I shall never forget. She left the room, disappeared, and later reappeared dressed in a black and red outfit. And I shall always remember the black lace stockings and shoes that were calibrated for hard-driving dance rhythms, all accompanied by the one giant black boombox, which she set on the floor. She pushed a button, and all of a sudden, my mom was transported to Spain, where she did what she did as best she could, castanets and all. there was a downside to all that, which was a source of embarrassment that made her want to hide from her children. I very distinctly recall the time we went to the Carl Company department store in Schenectady to visit Santa Claus. I think I was three or four. And when it was my turn to sit in his lap, he said, "And what do you want for Christmas?" And I said very meekly, "I don't believe in Santa Claus." And Santa's response was very becoming of an old gentleman. My mother, meanwhile, wished to be immediately transported by sled and reindeer or whatever contrivance to the other side of the store, if need be, the North Pole itself. And I think that my father and my mother sort of shared that kind of embarrassment of their children until they got older. Brilliant, until they got older. I guess maybe that's normal for all parents. But I do know that I recently asked her what it was that made her stories so sought after, so treasured. And she said that, she thought a moment and said that it's funny, I don't even think about it. I'm really telling stories for my own amusement, which surprised me. And then she said, it's just better when other people are around to enjoy them. And I thought, yeah, it's just like performance. It's just like a solo performer. She's doing what she loves to do, and she's doing it for herself and nobody else. And the fact that people are there to listen and to enjoy it just makes the party a lot better. Thank you. I miss Mom, and I am so glad that all of you are here to pay tribute to her and to share your love. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That was beautiful. Next, I'm going to go to my sister, Lillian's granddaughter, Bree. There's a few words.
Well,
Say who you are.
yeah, I'm Bree. I'm Lillian's granddaughter. This is my husband, JB, for anyone who doesn't know. So we were very close to my grandmother, of course, for the last 9 months, and actually the last few years off and on, we've been living very close to her. Actually, we were thinking, well, do you want to say about the Zoom thing?
Yeah, we were discussing and we were thinking that even though it's very hard not to be able to meet in person and not to be able to hug each other or see each other, this Zoom thing is really wonderful, and I think it's making the best of it. And somehow I think it would be apropos, this Zoom conversation, because Lillian was interested in everything and she was also interested in technology. Despite her age, and it struck me the most when I first met her. It was in Waverly 8 years ago, and the first thing she asked me, like, JB, what is an hashtag? You know,
a hashtag.
Hashtag, and from it was the least thing I expect. My parents didn't even know what it is, but she was always asking this question, and we heard that question quite a lot. And a lot of IT question. And as we moved closer, this IT question become more and more numerous. And for all of you who supported her in a way or another with this Alexa thing, you have no idea how many IT questions you've.
By the way, Rob, thanks for the Alexa, but you weren't there to help set it up and then to ask about all the questions about how email can be added.
Oh, yeah. That put you to work.
But she
actually used to call all the time, Bree. She used to call almost every night asking questions about Alexa.
She wouldn't say, hello, Rob, this is your Aunt Lillian. She'd say, that stupid bitch, Alexa. She can't get anything right.
She actually, we had to go to her apartment a few days ago to help clean, get some valuables out and to clean the fridge and all of these things. And the woman who's the resident advisor there, who knows all of the people, but she knows Lillian the most, I think. She was very fond of her. And her office is directly diagonal to my grandmother's apartment. And she said every night she would hear her yelling, "Alexa, play Artie Shaw."
There's a brightness button.
But to come back to the Zoom thing, she was always asking, "Bree, what is an hashtag? Bree, what's an hashtag?" And the last thing she was recently was, "What is 5G? Bree,
yeah,
5G."
That's right. She was in on the conspiracy theories as well.
But now I can't help myself to get ready to this question. Bree, what is Zoom? What is Zoom? And I think I have a spiel that come now, but this question is somehow very apropos, I find, with those things. So I think it's a great way to connect.
I think she would have loved the unmute button, because as much as she was so curious and so engaged and such an amazing listener and engaged, curious person, she was also a very engaged interrupter. And as soon as you went on 30 seconds longer than she expected, that was it. You were cut off. I think she would appreciate Zoom for that as well. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we have to do it this way, and it's not, it doesn't encompass everything that I think everyone felt for her. And I hope when all this craziness is over, we can, organize a real party, maybe next April, for her, real memorial. I'll get together and something like that. And I'm happy to organize again. I don't know. It's hard for me to think of a memory for her because we're totally surrounded by her here. We're living in her cabin that she purchased in the 70s. We're driving her car. We have like 10 of her sunglasses and glasses in that compartment.
Gloves.
And gloves and everything. And I think she also kind of surrounded all of our lives in one way or another, because she was such a huge part of all of our lives. She was so interested in everything that was going on. She was always there for the gossip, and it's difficult to realize that she's gone, because she's just omnipresent. And I think also because she was part of this generation that built this family, and she was the last of it. And so I think she built all of us to be what we are, and so she will never really be gone. But I can't. So that's it.
Yeah, the observation we made is that we live in the physical structure of things she built, but this family and all the people around, that's also what she built, even if it's not structural. All these people here are what she built, and with the 5 accomplishment there plus 1 altogether, they built all that family. And there's the related one, and for the plus 1, I think Catherine, you talked for all of us when you said that we wish we were related to Lillian. I think all of us, the plus 1, we wish we were related to her, and I think it's one of the big things we take from our partner is the chance to connect and to meet her. And she was very good at making us feel like we were related and connected. And she would have us for lunch or just call us on the 1-to-1. Sometimes Brie was not even here. And she was like, "Gee, babe, can you fix my email?" So she was good at making
She knew how to use people's strengths to her advantage. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Something that you told me, Jib, after she died, she not only adored you, but she loved your parents. And they spent 3 days together And I like what your parents said when she died, which is that she is missed on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah. She is one of those person we can be sing about in Africa and missed in Europe and, celebrity in America.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. That was great. I know my grandmother really developed a very strong affection towards JB in a short time. And I think if you look at kind of all our family and my mother, David, me, Bree, you'll see a pattern of my grandmother liking our partners all more than she liked us. So let's move on. Puffy, another niece of Lillian, you're next, if you'd like to say a few words.
I really appreciate going after Bray like that. So thanks for that, Ian. So I just have a memory that spans decades with Aunt Lillian. And I have Nikki behind the screen trying to calm me down because I'm not a public speaker. So as everyone knows, Robert went to Albany State and Aunt Lillian's was always a layover. And so me, my dad, Rob, and Rich one day went up there. And of course, she started cooking for us. And if you know Aunt Lily and Uncle Lou, fitness was everything to them and nothing to our family. As you know, our normal meal was steak and potatoes. It was meatballs and spaghetti, and Aunt Lillian was on the polar opposite side of that. So when we sat down to eat, us ravenous Selexons like we always were, there was nothing to drink on the table. And I said, Aunt Lily, you forgot the glasses. And her and Uncle Lou said, no, we don't drink while we eat because we would chew our food well enough so that we don't need to swallow it down with liquid. So I said, can I have some water? And she obliged. Well, you stand through about 40 years, and 5 years ago, me and John were on one of our trips in Florida, and we called Aunt Lillian to see if she wanted to meet us for a meal. And John's on the Skype in Florida somewhere up there. So if you want to chime in, John, you can. But we called Aunt Lillian. First off, she said, I'm kind of busy. What's your schedule look like? So I said, how about tomorrow? And she goes, no, Puffy, I have a movie appointment for tomorrow that can't be changed. I said, all right, Aunt Lil, not a problem. Not a problem. How about Thursday? Tennis. I got a tennis class with somebody, but if you come between 3 and 4, I'm good. So me and John hopped on that and took that and said, definitely we'll be down there. Do you need us to bring anything? She goes, no, I got this. So before we went, and John's there somewhere, and I said to John, we should eat before we go. And he said, honey, what are you talking about? We're going for lunch. I said, Aunt Lillian's a health nut. I said, we're going to be hungry. I said, Lord knows, she looks really good for a reason. So we get there, I open the door, and there's a yoga mat there on the floor. And I said, I looked at him and I go, do you see what I'm talking about? I go, she's 95. I'm like, we just took her out of tennis. So anyway, down, and to my surprise, my Aunt Lillian made homemade soup, sandwiches, coffee, cake, and I walked out of there saying, and John looked at me and said, what are you talking about? John, you're on there somewhere. I mean, you had hours of conversation with Aunt Lillian. What did she have to share with you?
Yeah, she was very interested in learning about me. This is the first time I met her, of course. And I didn't know what to expect because Puffy was telling me, she's an interesting woman. Just be prepared. And briefed me on the meal episode that, I may leave hungry. And I told her not to worry. In Florida, there's Cracker Barrel at every exit. We can eat on the way. Like I said, no surprise. She was very engaging, very charming, and she treated us like we were part. She treated me like I was part of the family forever.
Yeah.
I had met the woman 5 minutes before. She was very gracious. We had a lovely meal, and again, when we left, I asked Puffy, are you sure you were talking about the same Aunt Lillian? Because I feel like a king. That was the first time I met Aunt Lillian, you know.
Very blessed. We were all very blessed to have shared some special moments with her. And I think one of the best ones was when she used to come over, and she'd come over with a bag with her clothes in it. And I'd say, Aunt Lillian, where's your suitcase? She goes, it's right here. She'd whip out her wraparound skirt that wrapped around and tied. She goes, look, puppy, it doesn't wrinkle. I'm all set to go anywhere. And that was Aunt Lillian. Very, very down to earth. If you get over Uncle Lou's moaning, everybody's right. He would always be working out in Dad's living room. And Aunt Lily would always be yelling at him. And it was just it was just always so lovely. And I got to tell you, I know everybody says the Schenectady was Redneckville, but when we used to go as kids, I thought we were going to the other side of the earth, and that we were going to a upscale area, not the Redneckville. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm very fortunate. And you know, we all are very fortunate. And thank you all for putting together her 100th birthday, because you gave us an opportunity to say goodbye without even knowing it. So I really thank you all, and I raise a glass to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Puff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Puffy. That was beautiful. And John, thank you very much too.
Thank you, John.
Next, we're going to be going to a woman who needs no introduction. Maybe the person who knows the most people on this call, Amy Hill.
I don't know if I know the most. There are a lot of Sterns, and I'm happy to see you guys again. So what I'm going to start out telling you is that when I was a kid, because I may be one of the oldest people left in this call, which is kind of scary. But when I was a kid, I had a favorite aunt and a favorite uncle. And I felt like I was the luckiest person in the world, because I was madly in love with my Aunt Shirley, because she took me places. She introduced me to theater, and she was so loving and affectionate. I was crazy about my Uncle Arnie, because he taught us how to wrestle on the floor, and he always was good for a laugh. But then there was Aunt Lillian. And I say it that way because she scared me when I was a child. She was kind of, well, I hate to use the word stern. That was the perfect name for her. She seemed stern and judgmental. And so I was always a little afraid to go and visit her, but I loved seeing Janet and David. But somewhere over time, either she changed or my perception changed. And I got to know a completely different woman than I perceived when I was young. And I'm so glad that I did, because then I got a second favorite aunt. Now, whoever has two aunts and an uncle that were just the bee's knees? They were a spectacular gang, and I loved being with my family all the time. So I know we're all thrilled that Lillian made it to 100, and I've been asking myself, what is it that she had so that she could live to be 100? What qualities did she have? Because I got 25 years to go, and I kind of like to embrace some of those if I can, so I can make it to 100. So I've been analyzing what those qualities are. And the first that I can think of was her sense of play. She loved to play. She'd play a game with anybody, and it didn't matter. You've all heard about the basketball and the touch football and the Scrabble and tennis, and she always was good for word games. At Thanksgiving dinners, I remember we'd play a game with a dictionary, and she would make up words and definitions that would just have us howling on the floor. She was great at playing. And one of my favorite weekends ever was a weekend at Mohawk Mountain Lodge. And we went there and played all kinds of games. And I got to room with Lillian, and we stayed up into the wee hours of the night trying to solve puzzles that had been put together by Will Short. And I think Janet and George kind of went to bed before we did. They gave up and said, we're finished with the game, but Lillian was up for it pretty close to all night long. And her sense of play was just endearing. Another thing is she was a really good listener, and she heard what people said. She wanted to make sure she heard. And if she didn't hear you, she'd let you know because she'd want you to repeat it. She was extremely attentive to everything you had to say. And if she didn't understand it, she would ask questions. She really wanted to try new things. You've all heard about her technology and everything. She was always into trying whatever was new, whatever was new. If you think about it, she was playing Scrabble online, I think until she was 99. That's pretty amazing. I don't know many people who are 99 who are playing Scrabble and online and looking at emails. She did have some problems now and then, and I think Stephanie and Jim and I would sometimes help her with her iPad, but she was there. One of the things that every time I went, she'd say, I don't know why my email box is so loaded with all this junk email. Can you get rid of it? And so I would spend hours going through it, and a lot of what was there were political emails because somebody had her number as a big time Democrat or a progressive. And her mailbox would just be filled with all kinds of political messages, who she should support. And I think Lillian always it was important to her to stay alive, whether that meant stay active physically, intellectually, and politically. One of the great moments at one of our Thanksgiving dinners, we sat at the table and we were going around and talking about what we were most thankful for. And Lillian said, the happiest day of my life was the day that Obama was elected.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Janet?
Yes.
The happiest day of her life. And by the way, when I talked to her just before she died, and I don't even know if she heard me, I said, okay, the happiest day of your life was when Obama got elected, but I want you to live through this, Lillian, because the next happiest day of your life is when Trump is voted out of office. And I thought that would give her the will to live, but it didn't. But we should still root for that for all of us.
I'm going to vote for her.
What? You're going to
vote for her.
Please do. So one of the things that, I do have to talk about the food. Nancy, I'm so glad you mentioned that terrible pumpkin pie. I got so that I would start bringing other pies because Lillian really didn't believe in sugar. And so she'd make an apple pie, not much sugar. Pumpkin pie, not much sugar. And so we had to politely say, oh, I think I should make the pie this year. But she did make great soups, and she did enjoy an occasional Bloody Mary when she was feeling devilish. So in recent years, oh, and of course, you got to talk about her laughter. Lillian laughed at everything, and I think that's one of the things I loved about her. It didn't matter what I said, she always laughed. Didn't matter. And who doesn't like a good audience? She was a great laugher. I generally tried to call Lillian about once a week, twice a week, and our conversations would go on for at least 45 minutes, sometimes longer. And it didn't matter what I said. Maybe I was being an idiot, but she would just laugh and just enjoy everything we had to say. And that's a thrill. That was really a thrill. And I have to say already, I've missed my weekly phone calls with her. And as I've said to Janet, and I say it to all the rest of you, now that Lillian is gone, I challenge you all to keep on the banner and stay in touch with each other, stay in touch with me, keep laughing, keep asking questions, and playing and having a good time. Lillian, I'll miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. That was great. We're going to shift to a few more musical performances here. Earlier in the service, you heard from Catherine Needleman. We're going to go back to the Needleman-Mantell household, and we're going to hear her daughter, Allie, on the cello. And Catherine, if you guys want to just go right from Allie to Bammy, that's fine. If you want to transition on your own, that's fine. You guys there?
I guess we are. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Chantel or Allie, and I'm Lillian's great, 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 great niece. And I'm going to be playing two pieces by Bach, Bourrée 1 and Bourrée 2.
That was great. That was great. We're going to go right back out there for her brother Bammy.
Can you see him? Do you want to introduce yourself?
You want to say hi?
Hi.
Tell them what your name is.
Sammy meant Al.
And how did you know Aunt Lillian?
Okay.
Okay, no, get back there, get back there. Okay, play. Hold your violin flat. Put your hand there.
That was great.
Thank
All right,
you.
good. So we're going to move into our open mic stage of the ceremony. This might get a little disorganized, but we welcome anyone who wants to say anything. It can just be a simple story or memory or anything that you have to say. Please feel free to
Ian, I'll say a few words. Oh, sorry.
I just was telling, I've unmuted everybody, so anybody can speak.
Okay, thank you. All right, Rich.
I want to just say one thing. I want to congratulate Allie and Bammy on fantastic jobs and give them a special applause they here.
Nice.
Rich, I believe you wanted to say something.
Okay. So in case you don't know, I'm Aunt Lillian's favorite nephew. And Janet and David and Ian and Bree will find out in the reading of the will. So, but and talking about and Lillian's cooking, we used to love to go to Schenectady and visit her. But when we got off the thruway and we were like 5 miles close to Aunt Lillian's house, we played a little game of our favorite fast food restaurants, because after we got the 3 string beans, we were shot back out there to pick up our food. And if people don't know that Aunt Lillian actually named my father for a very crazy reason. She had a crush on a person named Arnie. And I didn't know my father's real name, Janet. What was his real name? Abraham.
Abraham.
I never even knew.
It's Abraham.
And so they changed his name. She changed my father's name to Arnie instead of Abraham, because she had a crush on somebody named Arnie Hammer. I'm just very happy the guy's name wasn't Adolf.
What was the guy's name? Was Arnie Hammer?
Yeah, they almost named Arnie Hammer. But a few weeks ago, I came down with something, and Aunt Lillian called me. This woman's 100 years old, and she's worried about my health. And it was pretty amazing. She just kept telling me, take care of yourself. You know, you'll be fine. And I really appreciate that. I think that was only 3 weeks ago. But she's like the most caring person in the world, and funny person. I might even got my laugh from her. I don't even know. But also, somebody else I want to mention, and Randy, let me know if I got this right. My second cousin, third removed. Do I have that right, Randy?
Yes.
Is Randy there? She's not there.
Yeah.
But Al passed away a few weeks ago too, and I miss them both. They both used to make me laugh so much. So it's very, very upsetting. But we'll never forget them. Thank you.
Sending love, Randy.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say a few words?
Of course.
Thing I remember about Lil was whenever I'd go to visit her, you know, you go to visit your relatives who are old, like I am now, and you know, they'd want to sit around and do nothing. Lil always wanted to do something. I remember going to visit her many times in Florida where she'd say, let's go to Miami. we'd go to Miami and we did the design district and we went to the museum and we went to the concert, and she was always on the go. And I remember when we had our cousins weekend, with the cousins on my mother's side of the family, and I was concerned that going to Michigan was too far for her. But she was determined, and when I went to pick up Janet and Lil at the train station, she got off the train with a cane. And I said, "Do you need help?" And she said, "Oh no, the cane is just so that people will not bother me. I don't really need it." She was just so full of life and fun, and as everybody has said, she had the best smile and the best laugh, and she was just a pleasure to be with whenever you to talk to. She was just special. And you know, her Lou and Sid were sort of subdued types. And they just married these wonderful people. Made the family much more fun.
That's true.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby.
I'll say something if that's okay.
Of course.
It was just such a joy to have gotten to know Aunt Lillian and to have her introduce me and Jim as her adopted niece and nephew to everybody at the Eddy was just beyond an honor to be a part of her family, I guess. And she loved our granddaughter Grace, who is also on this call, so much. Grace loved her as well. And I just wanted you to know that one of the fun memories I have of her is when she was getting ready for the wedding last, what was it, the fall of 2017? And she said, "Oh, I need some clothes." I said, "No, don't get any jackets. I have jackets. I'll bring jackets over and you can borrow one of mine." And so I brought my collection.
That's that picture.
And
She's showing her jacket.
At her birthday party, she was telling people about, she brought 30 jackets. And today I am wearing the jacket that she chose to wear at the wedding. I think it was for the rehearsal dinner. She wore her own jacket for the actual wedding. And so this has got Aunt Lillian's DNA on it. So wearing it proudly. And I'm just so grateful that we got to know her so well. And because we were often in upstate New York, we got to see her a bit, which was really, really a joy to me. And as Grace, our granddaughter, said this morning, I miss her so much. And I can't believe, well, Grace, what did you say? I think you're muted, actually. There you are.
I said, I can't believe we're not going to be able to visit her.
Yeah, hard to believe because she was so full of life. And you know, people talk about her being such a good listener. She would have made a wonderful politician because she remembered everything you told her about anybody. I mean, I'm 25 years younger and I don't remember things like she did. She remembered everything. And that's really a special gift. Anyway, we loved Aunt Lillian and we will miss her.
Yes.
Thank you for including us.
Yes, thank you.
She loved having you nearby, Stephanie and Jim. She really did. She was just thrilled with you and your granddaughter too.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
Yes, thank you.
Can I jump in really quickly? I have a baby who needs to be fed.
Oh, yes, of course.
Sorry. But I just wanted to say Lillian came to my wedding, which was prom themed in 2006. Not very many of my relatives understood the prom theme, I would say, but she was all over it. It was so wonderful of her to travel, and I just wanted to show this picture I found, which is just a random friend of mine this is the prom photo booth, right? So we had a photo booth at our prom wedding, and she was in everybody's picture, and she danced with everybody, and my friends were just amazed by her. She was so much fun. It was so lovely to have her. I talked to her on the phone a few weeks ago for the first time in years, and she wished me a happy baby, and I wished her a happy birthday, and it was just wonderful to reconnect, and I appreciate being here with you all. We should do it more often. I'm going to miss her a ton.
Becca, that trip to San Francisco, she just adored it, and she had so much fun at your wedding.
I had so much fun with her at my wedding.
I just wanted to add one sort of mystical thing. Last week, I spoke to a friend of mine who, in the midst of all this craziness, his wife gave birth to a baby. And I said, was it a boy or girl? He said, girl. And I said, what did you name the baby? He said, Lillian.
What?
Oh,
That's
wow.
crazy.
Oh my goodness.
So one door closes and one door opens.
That's crazy. That name is coming back?
I guess so.
Anyone else?
This is Alison, Rob's wife. Hi.
Alison.
Hi. I just want to say that, Lillian was such an extraordinary lady. There was so much positive energy that came from her all the time. She had a zest for life and an exuberant spirit that I will always remember. And Richie, I am going to tell the story about you. I don't know if you know the one, but we were at Lauren's, I think it was engagement party, and downstairs there was a ping pong table, and Richie and Aunt Lillian went down for a game of ping pong. And after it, Richie came up, scarcely able to walk, and she was all energetic, and she had such a zest for the next game. I mean, it was unbelievable.
I think she beat me too, though.
As forever young, and that's how she'll always be. That's her epitaph, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's why it's so hard to believe that we won't see her anymore, because she really was forever young. You're right. And as I was one of the people who was honored enough to be able to be one of her Scrabble opponents. I almost never won. She played until just a few months ago when she really couldn't see as well as she could up until then, but till 99 playing Scrabble and winning. It was amazing.
Well, following up on that amazing ping pong game that Richard played so well, I often asked her, she had such a reputation for playing tennis, that I asked her how she played down in Florida. And she would kind of apologetically say, we weren't really playing. And I went, what do you mean? And she went, well, my partner would sit on one side of the net and I'd be on the other. We'd take turns serving, and then we'd scream at the other guy, you go get the ball. So they would take turns getting the ball and serving to each other, and then they go in for a shot.
I think he's having a bit of connectivity issues.
But she can't listen. I say that I'm not happy with her. When I was born, her and Shirley would visit my father, and because I couldn't hold up my head, they insisted that I was retarded. And when I brought this story up to her the other day, she laughed even louder than she did the first time. But she was probably right, and Shirley was probably right, so leave it to them.
All right. Anyone else? As many people as want, please. If not, we're going to move on to the last portion of the memorial, which is another musical performance by Izzy Mantell, Elizabeth Mantell. She'll be singing Hallelujah. So we'll be going back out down to Baltimore for the performance. You guys have me in Mantell Needleman household?
Just a moment.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, and I gotta turn off the Zoom here.
While we vamp here, anyone want to say anything else?
Thank you for humoring me and my family with hearing us through this. Lillian was very important to all of us, and we've had wonderful visits with her for quite a number of years, and I think the kids have grown to love her and have sort of wished that that she was their grandmother or great grandmother or whatever. But we just feel so lucky to have had her in our lives, and so Izzy's gonna send us off, I guess.
So I'm Lillian's favorite great 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 grandniece. Yep. And she wasn't
Go
one
back
of
to
those
the speaker.
who were like old fart peoples. Like she was like she was fun to talk to and she was exciting to be around. And I really think that's why we all really enjoyed being around her, and that's why we all really loved her. Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, hallelujah, Your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I told the truth, I didn't come to fool you. I know it all went wrong. I'll stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah,
Thank you so much. That was beautiful in such an appropriate way to wrap today's memorial. Mom, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I really want to thank Amy again for organizing this. I want to thank my daughter Bree and her husband Jib for throwing that 100th birthday party, 3-day event, which they made look easy. I want to thank my son for being the master of ceremonies. I also particularly want to thank my West Coast cousins who I never see. And it was such a thrill to have you part of this. And I really want you to know that I wish we could see you more.
Well, next time you're in Durango, stop by.
There you are now.
California, hit us up.
I think that when my mother married my father, beyond her realizing it, her horizons expanded, especially with the kinds of lives that his sister and brother-in-law were leading. And even though my West Coast cousins always told me that they liked Judy and Laura better, I have a very, very profound, deep love of all of you. And I can't thank you enough for joining us, but also my Seligson cousins. We saw you all at the 100th birthday party, and as well as Judy and Laura and Bobby. And it was, as someone said earlier, it was the memorial service of the century. Thank you all.
Thank you.
We love you guys.
Just wait till next year.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Counting on you.
Thank
you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
Everybody.
Love you guys.
Ian, thank you so much for conducting this, and everyone else. Really.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you,
So
Ben.
nice to see you. And you dressed up for it.
Did.
You look good. You look good.
What am I,
Thank you.
chopped liver?
Who are you?
Super job, Izzy.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Izzy.
everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Stay safe, everyone.
We'll be in touch.
Bye. Yes.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye, baby.
Bye. Dogs are barking.
Bye, Amy. Bye, Amy.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Krasnows.
Amy, you're muted.
Bye, sister.
Can't hear you.
They don't.
Stephanie, you're showing up twice.
Well, that's a whole story. I'll tell you later.
Okay, just wondered. Slightly different angles. I thought that was the
It was, we started on the
snow runner
iPad.
in you.
On the iPad,
Eli?
you can only see
Hi.
Are you shooting that through the bottom of a Coke bottle?
No, it doesn't look like.
Because your lens is really soft.
Yeah, he has the filter, you know, it makes you look nice. And
I removed the filter.
Anyway, well, it's good to see everybody.
Oh, indeed. That was wonderful, Amy. Thank you for organizing it.
So,
I think people don't want to leave.
Amy, you're muted now, Amy.
That's right, Amy, you're still
Yeah,
muted.
Amy, you're muted.
Unbelievable.
I got it. I know how to do it.
Hey,
Just
we'll,
well, I'm going to end the meeting and we can all chat later.
Okay.
Another mechanism.
Bye.
to choose.
Thank you again.
Why?
Back, by the way, your photos were great.
Good.
Yes.
They
Very
were
good.
really good.
Everybody, if I'd had more of the photos a little earlier, it would have been a little more coherent. But
Oh, it was fine. It
Yeah, it
was
was great.
nice.
It was
Yeah,
terrific.
like,
It was perfect.
yeah.
okay.